Hello. So, if you're wondering if you can get a band 8 in the International English Language Testing System IELTS, then I'm going to tell you that that is very easy. My International English Language Testing System was prepared in 3 days and I was able to get a band 8 for overall. And this is very simple. Now, what is IELTS? IELTS is International English Language Testing System. It is an internationally recognized examination that is used to test your ability to communicate, to write, to express yourself, and to speak English language. And this particular IELTS exam is always a requirement if you want to travel to countries like the United Kingdom, to Canada, to Australia, and even to parts of the United States. So this is a very essential examination requirement to test your English language proficiency. And now, that brings us to what exactly do we ask in the exam? The exam is rationed or divided into 4 parts. We have the first one, which is the listening. We have the second one, which is the reading. We have the third one, which is the writing, and the fourth one, which is the speaking. Now, in listening, this is where most people are very scared. That is because most times people struggle to listen or to hear the voices of the person who is speaking, and these speeches can come in monologue in form of expression, two persons trying to argue, or a teacher teaching a classroom. So you're just going to hear conversations going on, and at the end of the conversation, they are going to ask you a question. For example, saying, I have a friend who I'm discussing with, and I tell the person about my day, and then you're going to be asked questions about things I said or things that my colleague has said. So that is simple, right? However, it is tricky because most times the accent might not be the accent you're used to, or you may not be able to get the information as fast as possible if you're not attentive. So that test is used to be able to check your ability to pay attention and be able to write proficiently, because sometimes you're going to fill in the spaces with the information you have gotten. It's not going to be an MCQ type of question where you're going to write it inside, and therefore your spellings should be top notch, because if you have an issue with the spelling, you're not going to pass. Even if you get the question, even if you get the right answer correct, but the spelling wrongly, you have failed that question. Now let's talk about let's talk about reading. Reading is the next after listening. And in reading, what they want to check is your ability to look out for information. We call it skimming and scanning. So people make a lot of mistakes when they are presented with a comprehension. It has 3 parts. Of course, the listening has 3 parts. The speaking also has 3 parts. So you're going to sit down and you're going to be presented with three different comprehension passages. They can get them from journals, sometimes from research articles, sometimes just from random passages that are written by Nobel laureates, and they're going to expect you to read the information correctly and answer the questions that followed. So that means in reading, you're meant to read in between the lines. But the trick is that most times a lot of people spend their time reading, but at the end of the day, they have very little time to finish up. This, remember, is an overview of the whole sections in the International English Language Testing System exam. And therefore, when you want to read, you do skimming and scanning. The first thing you have to do is to skim, and the next thing is to scan. I'm going to talk about this when the main class have started. That brings me to this invite. If you've not joined for the class, we're going to be having a session which is going to be live, explaining everything about these exams, how you can answer them, and also listening to your concerns for people who probably must have written but maybe have had an issue in a particular section. Now that takes me to writing. Writing is just in 2 parts. the first part and the second part. If you're writing IELTS, you must write professionally. That means you must pay attention to your paragraphing, you must pay attention to your sentencing, you must pay attention to your punctuations, and you must pay attention to your grammar. So these things, you cannot overlook them. Otherwise, you're going to risk getting a very low score in writing. Now, if you're going to write, you'll be given at part 1, you're going to be given a table, a chart, a line graph, a pie chart, or even a map for you to describe what you've seen in the map, in the table, and then pay attention. There are really important information that they want you to put out. So you don't just make a general overview, you also have to pinpoint differences and comparisons, because that is exactly what you're expected to do in writing. In part 2, you're going to be presented with an essay. So you're going to write an essay on anything they've given to you. It can be a discussion, it can be an argument, or it can just be an expressive or narrative essay. So these things have really ways to approach them. And like I said, these ways to approach these things are not difficult. If you can speak English at all, you are good. You only need to be mentored, you need to be guided, and you're going to see yourself getting a band 7 or 8. The last one is speaking, and speaking is most important. Even though they've recorded very low score, very low probability of people having issues with speaking, many people still have issues with speaking. And that means that you must pay attention to your type of speech. You don't go overboard, and you also don't say very little things. There is a pattern that works with speaking. You must be able to answer the question, you must be able to elaborate, and you must be able to explain. That is going to give you a very high score in speaking. What are they looking for? Your ability to communicate naturally, and your ability to be able to think critically, because critical thinking also comes board. Remember, do not, I repeat, do not memorize your answers. That is the easiest way to fail. Your examiner wants to be sure that you have the ability to communicate naturally. The first thing that you have to start to do that will actually guarantee your failure in the exam is when you memorize answers. And when your examiner notices that you memorize answers, they can decide to change your question, or they can decide to make it difficult for you to answer. And remember, that has a lot to do in your results. Remember that this speaking test is actually recorded, and they have to play it again and again. So most times, what you're going to do is to be as natural as possible in your speaking tests. And also make sure that you remember to go through few questions on your own, answer them with a mentor or a guide, and be able to get feedbacks before you go into the exam hall. So that being said, if you have watched up to this, then that means you might be interested in learning the information or secrets to answering these questions and getting an A grade, C2 or C1. You don't have to miss this opportunity, because the training is actually going to be live on YouTube and free of charge. So I'm going to be answering any questions you have. If you're looking for a band 8, a band 9, that is very easy to get. You just need to focus, and you just need to prepare. Most of us don't prepare for that exams. The IELTS exams is not an exam that you write because you are book smart. You think you're smart, and then you think you know how to speak English or write essays, and you just go into the exam. You might not get a good score. So you need to put every effort you can to prepare for this exam. That being said, I've given you a random overview of the International English Language Testing System exam. And if you join the link and get ready for the class on 29th November, we're going to be giving you more information on each of these sections and how to answer each questions, and giving you sample questions, live materials, and individual mentorship. If you are going to do that, if you're interested in individual mentorship, we can decide to arrange for that. So thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you enjoyed this video, like, follow, and subscribe. Thank you.